on guys, Candice B here. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. Welcome back to my subscribers and welcome to my new ones. How is everybody doing? I hope you are all doing well. I hope you guys had a great weekend, a very relaxing one. So today I am back again with another analysis video, just a market outlook preparing for the week ahead as usual. And of course we are looking at the lovely GBPJPY. So with me, I always say that I try to keep things simple when it comes to Forex, when it comes to analyzing charts and trading. For my personality, I find that is what works best for me. So when I'm analyzing any chart, whether it be GJ, EJ, gold, any chart at all, I like to kind of have a process in which I follow just to keep it simple, like I said. So I'm gonna just briefly share with you guys in this video just kind of my 3-step process to how I analyze charts, because I know a lot of times when you're learning how to trade, you get intimidated by just how many things are going on. You look at a chart and you're just confused by all of these colors and patterns and, you know, all these indicators, and it just gets really overwhelming. So that's why I kind of narrowed it down to this kind of 3 main step process that I always do. I always include these 3 steps in the bare minimum whenever I'm analyzing a chart, because it helps me just to make the best informed decision for myself and increase my confidence when I'm entering a trade. Now, as a disclaimer, of course, the information that I'm talking about in this video is just solely from my point of view, my opinion, things that have worked for me. So take it with a grain of salt, like I always say, and just keep in mind that analyzing charts is not just about looking at a candlestick and just taking a trade. I mean, a lot of people do that, but I doubt that they, find consistency in that. So you just got to understand that when I say I'm using these 3 simple steps, there is so much more that goes on in the background that I do as well. So don't think that this is just all you need. And I'm not telling you to follow what I'm doing. I'm not teaching anything. I'm not a mentor. This is just something that I personally do, but please keep in mind that there is a lot more that I do in the background and a lot more that goes into my analysis. So before anyone tries to come for me, even though I did not send for them, please just know that this is just a skeleton, an outline, a blueprint, whatever you want to call it, very, very general. I personally like to keep my videos on my channel as short as possible, as simple as possible, but please keep in mind that there is a lot of work done in the background, when it comes to just creating the trading plan, following the trading plan, working on my mindset to have the discipline to follow my trading plan, being able to review my trades, my losses specifically, and just knowing when to cut my losses short, trying to push myself to let my winners run. There's so much that goes into it. So yeah, just wanted to say that, keep that in mind. Anyways, let's get into the video. All right, so as you can see, we are on the monthly time frame. Of course, I do my top-down analysis. That is a main thing that I always do. So on the monthly of GJ, just gonna do this little overview. I'm just gonna zoom in just to kind of not be repetitive with all my other GJ analysis videos. So just kind of going into more recent price action. Right now, we still know that, last month's candle was very bearish, but there is that bottom wick that pushed up, indicating that the bulls are still a factor. So looking at this most recent monthly, we are in October. Now that we only have a few days left in October, this is interesting to see because it looks like a doji more so is being formed. Things can happen, a lot of crazy things can happen this coming week, especially since it's the end of the month. So you never know, this may not end up looking like this. This could end up looking like this, or, it could end up looking like this. You never know. So it could be bearish, bullish, it can end as a doji, but as far as I see right now, you can kind of compare back to last month. Visually, you can clearly see that there was a lot less momentum, a lot less volume in this month's candle as opposed to September's candle. So that's something interesting to kind of note, that even though we're at the end of October, this is what the candlestick is looking like. And you can see if you look back, we have months when that happens. This is not as high volume as this month. This is definitely not as high volume as this month. You can see that that is something normal with GJ. It's not out of the blue. But yeah, as far as just the momentum, I feel like, the bears might still be involved. They're in a kind of a tug of war with the bulls, because right now, as it shows, this is very indecisive. Both the bulls and the bears are kind of equally yoked in terms of their pressure. So I want to go down to the weekly and kind of see if that shows a bit more clearly. So now on the weekly time frame, we kind of get a better idea of what happened just this past week. We see that price did open, it did gap down, and the reason why I know this is because last week's candle, it closed here, and then as you can see, there is that little gap area, like right there. There was a gap. I don't know if that helped, but yeah, there was a gap down, and then price pushed up, and then the bears came in to push price down. So yeah, I do feel like the bears, even though they kind of came in at maybe last minute towards the end of the week, they still came in with some strength just to show the bulls that, hey, we are still here, we are still a factor, don't count us out yet. So yeah, this is very interesting. What I'm noticing as well is that in the last 3 weeks, price has been unable to break above this area as much as it has tried to do. So if I zoom out, we see, of course, this bearish pressure, and then we see a correction pretty much. So to me, this indicates that price has the possibility, the probability to follow this trend, follow basically this area and duplicate it here, where you see that bearish pressure, that exhaustion, and then more bearish pressure. So we'll see if that actually happens. Getting into the 3 simple steps that I kind of go by, the first thing that I look for is the overall direction. So we saw on the monthly that, it was bearish. And so now that we're on the weekly, again, this is kind of Confluence more recently. I'm trying to keep with the more recent price action just because it's the most realistic. So if we're thinking about higher lows, higher highs being confirmation that we're in a bullish trend, we see that the higher high was not made here. We see a higher high here, higher high here, higher high here. We see a higher low, but we don't see a higher high. So to me, that's showing that, this can be a break of that bullish momentum that was happening in these past couple weeks since the beginning of March. And this is another confluence showing that price may be starting to want to push down here. So that's why I wanted to draw this zone, because it's showing me that in the past 3 weeks, price has been unable to push up, whereas previously when these higher highs were being made, even though there was, let's say, these little bearish candles here, first of all, they were very small, and second of all, they were still in kind of pattern incongruence with this higher momentum, this push up. So this is why it's kind of important to know how to read candlesticks, because they show a lot. Their patterns and how they're formed shows a lot, and it'll help you to build your analysis, of course. It's one of the main factors. So looking at this, I would say that yes, we still have some bearish pressure and that we're setting up for a possible push down. Now again, anything can happen. This candlestick for this new week can open, let's say it pushes down with just that last bearish momentum that came in at the end of the week. It pushes down and then it pushes up to fill the wick, and let's say it breaks this zone. So it can do that. It can do something like that. Sorry, my drawing is so horrible. I apologize, but you get the idea. I'm just basically saying that price can very well break up above this area, but as it stands right now, what I'm seeing just with these last 3 candlesticks, the fact that price has not been able to close above, and then this last candlestick, we see the tap of that zone and we see a push down, then that just shows me that, there is a high chance that price can still continue down. Into where, we don't know, but we have this range. That is a possibility. So that's the first step, looking at the overall direction based on the higher time frames, the monthly, the weekly. Let's go down to the daily. So right now my, bias is bearish, as you can see, just based on the direction of these higher time frames. And so now looking at the daily, I'm just going to see we have this confirmation, kind of like a double top, which is seen as a bearish pattern, or a pattern to indicate that there is a reversal happening. But as you can see, price was pushing up here, but then it essentially hit this wall and it has not been able to break it in a few weeks. So that is confirming to me that, that is possibly still wanting to be a bearish direction. And so with the higher time frames, I feel like they are pretty much in confluence with each other in terms of the direction. So it's just a matter of waiting to see what price ends up doing. Depending on news and whatnot, things can happen where price can gather liquidity and push above. But as far as this pattern is here, it is showing that this is a strong resistance and it will take quite a bit of strength to push past this area. But if not, then, you know, the downside is more realistic right now with price. So the second step that I do is I look down to the lower time frames, and by lower time frames, I'll consider it, you know, the H4, the H1, and the 30. So I'm gonna go down to the H4, and I just want to see the structure on the lower time frame. So that's the second thing that I kind of look for. So one is overall direction based on the higher time frames, you know, do they match up? And then two is the structure on the lower time frames, do they match up? So going down to the 4 hour as we are on here, we get a better, clearer idea of what happened when price came up to this area. We kind of see more of a double top here and then another third touch. So more so that there were 3 touches here. So 1, 2, 3, if you want to call it that. 3 touches in this area. Each time price fell away from it, with of course smaller zones in between. But that is what is showing me that there is still that structure. So if we're going more recently here, we do see lower highs, lower lows in this area. If you want to just like draw it out, we can see that, and I'm sure the lower time frames, the H1 and the 30-minute, will probably show that a bit clearer, but we do see that lower high, lower low structure. So it is clear that there is structure when you zoom out. You see the taps on this zone, and then when you zoom in more recently, the lower high, lower low structure. So there's definitely structure in my opinion. I can personally see it. I don't know if anyone else can, but I mean, I look at GJ all the time. I guess you can say I can kind of see more things. I can see the structure playing out, but let's go down to the 1 hour and see what the structure looks like here. Let me just delete this. So yeah, we see that structure, even though it doesn't look the prettiest, mind you. Again, you know, price will never look the prettiest. Of course, we always want to see structure nice and pretty without any crazy wicks and, you know, whipsaws and whatnot, but that's not really realistic when it comes to Forex. So in this case, we see a little bit of whipsaw here and there, but if we're looking at the close of the candles, we see that price is still respecting its structure. So just even looking at here, you can start to kind of draw out those areas where price has tapped, just to kind of help you get a visual idea of what is happening and what is going on. So yeah, and then, you know, as you go down to the lower time frames, you can draw more zones if you'd like, but for me, I like drawing zones on the H4 and the 1 hour. They're a bit clearer for me. So yes, definitely there is that structure. So we see that on the H1 as well. So going down to the M30, let's see the structure on the M30. Of course, pretty much it's just going to be more candlesticks, same idea. Yeah, so we can see, pull that here. We have structure. We see that price taps multiple times into certain zones. And me personally, how I look at zones is the more times that price taps it and rejects it, the stronger that zone will be. So that's kind of what I use as Confluence to, let's say I'm here and I'm looking to sell, I see the price tap this zone 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Okay, then, you know, I've seen that it's not able to break above, then there is more of a chance that, you know, sells would be viable. You know, set your stop loss above the zone and then find your take profit at, let's say, the next area where there's high traffic, which would be around here. So that's a confluence that I always use, is how many times a zone has been tapped. I want to see rejection wicks like this, you know, where price taps an area and then closes below it with a top wick, because that shows exhaustion, and then the bears came in and kind of took over. So yes, we absolutely see that structure on the M30 as well. And yeah, it's pretty clear. It's pretty straightforward. You know, there's not really much I can really say. You know, just having that chart time, depending on whatever pair you trade, just really looking at the charts over and over for hours and hours, you'll start to see how it moves and where it usually creates structure and how it creates structure, and then go from there. So after I do the first step, which was determining the overall direction based on the higher time frames, and then I go down to the lower time frames and look at the structure, you know, the H4, the H1, the M30. Then the third thing that I do is I determine the confluences. So now this is the time where I want to add to my bias. I want to validate my bias. I want to make sure that this is what will help me increase my edge and to increase my confidence of entering a trade. And of course, always making sure that the risk to reward ratio makes sense and it's worth it to get into the trade. You know, making sure that I'm going to make more, if not the same amount that I risk, whatever the case may be. So everyone has different risk to reward ratios. Some go for 1-to-1, some go for 1-to-2, 1-to-3. Just figure out which one works for you. Me, I try to go for a 1-to-3, but I'm noticing more so that a 1-to-2 is a bit more comfortable for me. So, you know, it's not something that's set in stone, you can adjust it, but once you kind of have that risk to reward ratio that you're comfortable with, it's easier to track when you just follow it, and then, you know, you kind of build up that data and see if it works on a long-term basis. So that is the third step, determining confluences. And for those who don't know, by confluences, I mean confirmations, just another word. So just making sure I see, okay, what are the candlesticks showing? Do I see higher low, higher high structure? Okay, that's one confluence. Is it rejecting a zone? Okay, that's a second confluence. Let's say you use EMAs. Let's say you put a 50 EMA. Let me just do that for the sake of this video. Where the heck are the, I don't even know how to find. So I added a 50 EMA, let's say, for people who use EMAs. So for example, in this case, my bias with GJ is bearish. So I'm looking to see if the candlesticks are closing below the EMA. And let's say that I look at different time frames. Okay, is it closing below the EMA on this time frame, the 1 hour? Okay, let's go up to the 4 hour. Is it doing the same thing? Okay, it is closing below. So just getting those confluences, that really helps you just to build your confidence, really. And that's the goal with having multiple confluences. And it just makes sense going down to the 50-minute. Okay, it's still closing below the EMA. So yeah, there's so many things that you can do depending on what confirmations you look for. Having a few of them is always a good idea. It's never a bad idea. The more confluences, the better. You know, it just helps you to increase your confidence, in my opinion. I think that's the kind of main thing, how I see confluences as. And then you take your trade and you set your risk to reward, and you know, then you leave it, then you let it ride out, and that really helps you just to know that, okay, whatever happens at the end of the day, trading is a matter of probability. Price can go your way a certain amount of times, but there will still be those times that, regardless of how many confluences you have, how many confirmations, how many things are on your side, regardless of all of that, it will still go against you. So just understanding that at the end of the day, because then that'll help you to accept your losses. If you follow everything in your trading plan, if you have your confluences, you determine your bias, you see the structure, you trade at the same trading session, the same time every day, then it helps you just to know that, okay, even though this might be a loss, this trade can be a loss, at least I've done everything in my power that I could do to make it a good trade, to validate the fact that I'm in the market. And then you manage your risk. You protect your capital. But long story short, that's pretty much what I look for when I do my analysis. These 3 simple steps. And then of course, like I said, there are different things that in the background that I work on to make sure that I'm just trying to be the best trader that I can be, always working on myself. But yeah, that's pretty much how I do my analysis on a regular basis. Overall, like I said, I am looking for sells on GJ. I do see that price did break below this recent zone and came back to retap it. If I look to the left, there is some traffic as well here, but it looks like this is a pretty good range. If I just measure it out where it is now, this is a pretty good range, 20 pip range. You know, that's a pretty good scalp. And I see that price closed as a bearish doji. So that's a good confluence for me to look at. So yeah, I would be waiting to see what happens, but I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like this is a really, you know, simple range for GJ especially to fill. So I wouldn't be surprised if it actually did it pretty early in the week. Again, another doji on the M30 here, and then a bearish candle, but there is a chance that price can push up. Let's say if we're using the 50 EMA, then it can kind of come up to it before it rejects again. So we'll wait and see. I don't usually use the 50 EMA, but it is a really good confluence, you know, for those of you who like using EMAs. Like, I feel like that's as far as it goes when it comes to indicators that I use. But I know some people use Fibonacci and stuff. So again, even Fibonacci, that can be another confluence, you know, that you use after you've already had, you know, a few confirmations just by looking at price action. Then you add your EMA, you add your Fibonacci just as more confluence. So I know quite a few traders do that and it works out pretty well for them. So to each their own, but yeah, that is pretty much all I have to share in this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you found it informative, please let me know by hitting that like button. I always appreciate it. And also feel free to comment down below, what pairs are you looking for this week? What confluences do you use? What simple strategies do you try to focus on? Are you someone who likes to be simple, or do you kind of have a whole different complicated process that, that is a bit more complex? Let me know. And last but not least, don't forget to subscribe so you know when I post another video. And in the meantime, feel free to check out any of my other videos on this channel and my other channel. But I appreciate you guys all so much as usual. And I hope you have a splendid, amazing, mentally healthy, physically healthy day, week, and life. Bye!